Welcome to the Midnight Story Club. There's a trail in Northern California that doesn't appear on any park map. At least, not anymore. If you stop at the visitor center and ask about it, most of the rangers will tell you they've never heard of it. Some will smile politely and redirect you to one of the marked trails. Others will go quiet for a second too long, like they're deciding how much they're allowed to say. But a few years ago, one ranger said something different. He looked me dead in the eye and said, "If you find that trail, do not stay after dark." That should have been enough for me. It wasn't. I'd gone to the park alone that weekend because I needed the quiet. Work had been brutal. My phone never stopped buzzing, and I wanted 2 days where nobody could reach me. Just trees, cold air, and the sound of my own boots on the dirt. The park itself was beautiful. Massive pines, steep ridges, long stretches of mist clinging to the forest floor even after sunrise. The kind of place that feels ancient. The kind of place where trees look like they've seen things. I arrived late Friday afternoon and checked into a small campsite near the edge of the park. Nothing fancy, just a fire ring, a picnic table, and enough distance from the other sites to feel alone. The ranger station was still open, so I stopped in to ask about the trail conditions. That's where I met him. He was older, late 50s maybe. Deep lines in his face, gray in his beard. One of those people who looked like they belonged outdoors more than indoors. His name tag said Ranger Holt. I asked him what trail he recommended if I wanted something quiet, less crowded. He gave me a map and circled 2 routes. Then he paused. "Stay on the marked trails," he said. I laughed a little and told him I wasn't planning to go off grid or anything, but he didn't laugh back. Instead, he leaned one arm on the counter and lowered his voice. "If you come across an old wooden sign that says North Ridge Spur, ignore it." I frowned. "That a closed trail?" He hesitated. "Something like that." I asked him why it wasn't marked on the map. He looked over his shoulder to make sure no one else was listening. Then he said very quietly, "Because people keep finding it anyway." I remember smiling, thinking he was trying to spook me a little. Maybe some local ghost story they told tourists. But he wasn't smiling. "If you see that sign," he said, "turn around. And if for some reason you don't, then whatever you do, do not stay after dark." I should have asked more questions. Instead, I just nodded, folded the map, and went back to my campsite. That night, the forest was louder than I expected. Wind in the trees, branches creaking, something moving through the brush now and then. I barely slept. Not because I was scared, mostly because everything felt so unfamiliar. The next morning, I headed out just after sunrise. I chose one of the trails Holt had circled, an easy route that wound through dense forest and gradually climbed toward a ridge overlooking the valley. For the first 2 hours, it was perfect. Cool air, shafts of light through the trees, hardly another person in sight. Then I saw the sign. It was old, half hidden by ferns, mounted crookedly on a tree like someone had tried to remove it years ago and never finished the job. North Ridge Spur. The lettering was faded, but still readable. I stopped walking. There was no mention of it on the map. No posted closure notice, no warning tape. Just a narrow trail disappearing into darker woods. I should have turned around right there. Instead, I stood there thinking about what Ranger Holt had said. The words, "do not stay after dark," kept replaying in my head. Not, "don't go," not, "it's dangerous," just, "don't stay after dark." And that tiny difference was enough to convince me there was some rational explanation. Maybe unstable ground. Maybe a bad drop-off. Maybe some old mineshaft that became dangerous at night. So I told myself I'd just walk a little way in. 10 minutes maybe. Maybe 15. Just enough to satisfy my curiosity. The forest changed almost immediately. The main trail had been bright and open, but the spur was narrower, darker, quieter. The trees grew closer together. The air felt colder. Even the smell changed. From sun-warmed pine and earth to something damp and stale, like wet leaves that never fully dried. I kept expecting to hear birds. There weren't any. No chirping, no wing beats, nothing. Just the sound of my own boots and the occasional snap of a twig somewhere deeper in the woods. At first, I told myself that was normal. Then I noticed the trail itself. It looked worn, not recently, but consistently, like something had been using it long after it was supposed to be closed. Not hikers. There were no fresh boot prints. Just long, dragged shapes in the dirt, parallel in some places, erratic in others, like something heavy had been pulled along the path over and over again. That was the first time I thought about turning back. Then I saw the second sign. It was nailed to a tree about half a mile in. No park logo, no official markings, just hand-painted words on a rough plank. If you hear whistling, leave the trail. I stood there staring at it for a long time. It was too specific to be a prank. People make joke signs all the time, but not like that. Not out there. Not where no one else was around to see if it worked. I took a photo of it with my phone. Then I kept walking. I know that was stupid. It sounds stupid even saying it now. But curiosity does something weird to people when they're alone. It turns every warning into a challenge. Every bad feeling into something you think you can outsmart. The temperature dropped again. I could see my breath in front of me, even though it shouldn't have been cold enough for that. That's when I heard the first whistle. It was faint. So faint I almost convinced myself I'd imagined it. Just 3 notes. High, thin, far away. I froze. The whistle came again. Not from ahead of me. From somewhere off to my right, beyond the trees. I stared into the woods, expecting to see another hiker. Nothing. Then, from my left, the same 3 notes. Closer. I remembered the sign instantly. If you hear whistling, leave the trail. I turned around and started walking the way I came back. Not running, not yet. Just walking fast, trying not to panic. The whistle came again, this time behind me. 3 notes, exactly the same. And then something else. Footsteps. Not on the trail. Beside it. keeping pace with me through the trees. I couldn't see anything. The brush was too thick. The trunks too close together. But whatever it was, it moved when I moved, stopped when I stopped. I told myself it was an animal. A deer, maybe. A coyote. But animals don't whistle. And whatever this was, it was smart enough not to step onto the trail. It was hurting me. That realization hit me like cold water. I started moving faster. So did it. For a few seconds, I could hear branches shifting just beyond sight, parallel to the trail, matching my pace exactly. Then it went quiet. Too quiet. The kind of silence that feels deliberate. I checked my phone. No service. The battery, which had been above 80% earlier, was down to 23. That made no sense. I wasn't using it. I shoved it back in my pocket and kept going. A few minutes later, I saw the first sign again. North Ridge Spur. Same crooked sign, same tree. I stopped dead. It was impossible. I'd been walking back in a straight line for at least 15 minutes. I should have hit the main trail by then. Instead, I was back at the entrance to the spur. That's when I really panicked. I spun around, trying to get my bearings, but the forest looked wrong now. Darker, thicker, like the spaces behind the trees had shifted while I wasn't looking. Then the whistling started again. Not one whistle, several, different distances, different directions. All the same 3 notes. One to my left, one further uphill, one behind me. And then from somewhere ahead, a voice. So quiet I almost missed it. Still here. I went cold. It sounded human. That was the worst part. Not a growl, not something monstrous. Just a voice in the woods. Like it was making an observation. I ran. I didn't care if I stayed on the trail anymore. I just ran uphill, crashing through the brush, roots, branches slapping my face. I could hear the whistles behind me now, more frequent, more excited somehow, like they were signaling to each other. I don't know how long I ran. Maybe 10 minutes, maybe 30. Long enough for the light to start changing. That's when I realized something terrifying. The woods were getting darker. I looked at my watch. 4:17 p.m. It shouldn't have been dark for hours yet. But the trees around me were sinking into dusk, shadows stretching too long. The sky above the canopy turning from gray to deep blue. Then I remembered Holt's warning. Do not stay after dark. Not because darkness was coming naturally. Because on that trail, it came faster. I finally broke through the trees onto a wider path and nearly collided with someone. It was Ranger Holt. He grabbed my shoulders so hard I almost fell. Don't talk, he snapped. Then he put one finger to his lips and listened. At first I heard nothing. Then faintly from the woods we'd just come out of, whistling. 3 notes. Again. And again. Holt didn't move until the sound drifted further away. Then he let go of me. How did you find me? I whispered. He looked exhausted. Your car was still there. I asked him what was out there. He didn't answer right away. Instead, he stared into the trees like he expected something to emerge. Then he said, 21 years ago, a search team went in on that spur after a missing camper. Radios, dogs. They found one boot, a flashlight, and one of the dogs. Nothing else, he paused. After that, we closed the trail. Then why not remove it? We do. I stared at him. He nodded toward the woods. Every few months, the sign comes back. I asked him what made the whistling. Holt looked at me for a long time before answering. Then he said something I think about more than I want to. We used to think it was trying to lure people deeper in. He glanced back toward the darkening trees. Now I think it's counting. We made it back to the ranger station just before sunset. I packed my campsite in near silence and left before full dark. I never went back. But a few weeks later, when I finally looked through the photos on my phone, I found the picture I'd taken of that sign. The one that said, "If you hear whistling, leave the trail." Only that wasn't what it said anymore. In the photo, the words were different. The sign read, "If you hear whistling, it already knows your name." And in the dark space between the trees behind it, just barely visible, was a figure standing off the trail, watching me. Good night, and thank you for listening to the Midnight Story Club. Please subscribe. The stories told on the Midnight Story Club are works of fiction, folklore, or personal accounts submitted by listeners. While some stories may reference real places or events, they are told for entertainment purposes.